So let's go to our BP player, go to event graph. Now we will use event called onController on receive controller changed. So this event fires every time player controller is changed. So player controller won't be changed during the gameplay, but it will be set at the beginning of our gameplay. So this event will fire at the beginning of our game. Yes, we could use begin play, but begin play will be useful later, so we can use this event receive controller changed to assign our inputs. And as I said before, we will use this BP player controller that we just created here, this BP player controller, to make sure that this new player controller is the player controller that we want. So in our case, BP player controller, we can grab from this new controller value, which is object reference, we can grab from this and we can cast to BP player controller. What it does is it checks if this new controller is our BP player controller. We're just getting this value and comparing it to BP player controller. That's it. And if it is BP player controller, it also gives us an output of BP player controller. So now we can do things with this player controller. For example, we can add input mapping context to our player in order to use inputs inside this blueprint. To add this mapping context, this guy right here, to add this into our blueprint, we first need to get enhanced input local player subsystem. I know it's super long name, it should be shorter, but it is what it is. And from this enhanced input local player subsystem, finally we can add mapping context. We can plug this pin right here. And the last thing that we need to do is to specify which mapping context we want to use. So let's choose the only one that we have, IMC player. Okay, let's compile, save. And the last thing we need to do is, if any of this will not work properly, if we'll try to add mapping context, we will have an error. And to make sure that this is not happening in our game, we can grab this input local player subsystem and we can check is valid with this question mark. And what it does, this is actually a macro like this. We can go inside and see what it does. This macro just checks if this enhanced input local player subsystem in our case is valid, which means if it was successfully created. If it was successfully created, then we can add mapping context to it. And now with this setup, we can finally use inputs inside our player character. Before we wrap up this video, we can organize this code a little bit. I know it's only like 5 nodes, but later it will get a lot messier. So we can organize our code from the beginning so we have a much cleaner graph later. So I move these like somewhere here, and this line is going through that node. It's really bothering me. So we can just hover our mouse over this line, double click on this, and now we have this little dot or something, and we can move this wherever we want. This is actually called reroute node. But what's also bothering me is that this line is not straight. And to straighten this line up, we can select this node, this little dot right here, and press Q on our keyboard. And now you can see it's pretty straight. Now we can hit compile, save, and the last thing that we want to do is hover over every node and hit C on our keyboard. And this will create a comment. So we can comment this, for example, add a mapping context. Really simple comment, but it will look nicer on our event graph, and it will be easier to find later if we would like to make any changes to that. Now let's compile, save, and let's see what can we actually do with this input mapping context added to our player.